Werner Kunkel is a story that just seemingly has another twist to it every time that I see any development. And one of the individuals that has been working on that case is Dane DeKrey. He's a friend of ours. Rings from DeKrey Law in Moorhead. But if you're a regular listener of After He's Live, we have a monthly segment called Law Talk. And Dane, I appreciate you coming in. With Werner Kunkel, tell the News and Views audience like how you're involved and what happened with Werner Kunkel.
Yeah, so we're involved. We are representing Werner Kunkel pro bono for free. We believe that he was wrongfully convicted of a murder that happened in 1986. He was convicted in 1995. He spent 30 years in state prison, and he wrote letters to a variety of lawyers. I was one who answered, along with an organization called the Great North Innocence Project, and we agreed to look at his case and review it. And when we did, we agreed that this conviction was wrong, that we believed he was factually innocent, and we've been fighting for his release ever since.
Well, and that release finally happened after a long back and forth between appeals, and all that, state coming in late. But it was just, 2 days ago that a judge decided that, Werner Kunkel, you're free to go, you're going to be monitored, but you don't have to be inside this facility, right?
Yep. And so on Wednesday, after we got his conviction overturned, what that meant is the state had to start over and try him again for this murder they think that he committed. And so anytime you're charged with a crime, you have a right to get out of jail while you're waiting for your case to take place. And so our hearing on Wednesday was to decide, should Werner get to be out with his family while he fights this case, or should he remain in jail? And Judge Ted Sandberg from Grand Forks, who is sitting because all of the judges in Devil's Lake have recused themselves, Ted Sandberg agreed that Werner should have the opportunity to be released under strict conditions while his new murder trial proceeds.
And the reason why the Devil's Lake judges had to recuse themselves is, one of them was the prosecutor in this case in 1994, 95, right?
Yeah. Judge Lonnie Olson was the prosecutor in Werner's case in 1995, and some of the questions related to the case are what Judge Olson did when he was a prosecutor and whether or not he turned over important documents to the case that we believe, had they been turned over, Werner likely would have never been found guilty in the first place.
So Werner Kunkel gets judges to say, yep, you can go be with your family. And then the headline that I read, that he is detained again, this time now through ICE.
Yeah, so Wednesday was a moment of triumph, followed on Thursday by another setback. So on Wednesday, we left from Fargo. We had the hearing by Zoom, so we drove to Devil's Lake thinking that we were going to be among the first people to see Werner walk out onto free soil for the first time in 30 years. But there's another wrinkle to this case, which is that ICE, or the U.S. government, doesn't want Werner Kunkel to be in the country anymore. They say that he is not here legally anymore. And so he essentially has two cases going on at once. He has his criminal case, where we got him released, and now he also has an immigration case where they say, we want to get rid of you. And so in that case, he basically has to start over. They have arrested him for that case, and we now have to go down to a different judge and make the same arguments that we made on Wednesday to a new judge and say, look, while we're waiting for our hearing to fight the case, we believe once again that Werner should be allowed to be back with his family in Devil's Lake.
So the federal government through customs, the immigration enforcement, they're saying he's not here legally. What based on what? I legitimately asking. I don't know.
So Werner came to the country when he was 5 years old. He was brought here from Germany. And so when that happens, you are not a U.S.-born citizen. Mm-hmm. But if your parent who brings you back, which was his birth mother and his father from Devil's Lake, if they simply would have filed one piece of paperwork with the U.S. government, Werner would have been a citizen before he was 18, and he would have no problem. No one can take away your citizenship once you have committed crimes in America. So through no fault of his own, Werner didn't get that document signed. So he remained a permanent resident. Now, in the United States, when you commit certain crimes, we can say, we don't want you here anymore. You're no longer a good citizen. We don't want you messing around with Americans. And if you commit certain crimes, we can send you home. That's what they're trying to say. But we are trying to fight back and say those crimes that they are trying to use are over 35 years old. Werner is not the same person, and therefore they should make an exception and let him stay.
And Kunkel's what, like mid-60s, somewhere in there?
Yeah, Werner's in his mid-60s.
Okay. So the question that I had right away is, with all the work that's been going on back and forth of, having this, do-over, if you will, about this conviction that's been since overturned, getting him released, and then after he is released is when the Immigrations and Customs comes in and detains him. Couldn't this have been done before all that? I'm suspicious in the timeline of how this all worked out.
You should be. This detention or deportation order has been in existence since 1996 when Werner was convicted of murder. So at any point in time, the U.S. government, had they actually cared, could have come to the prison he was at and deported him back to Germany. Once we moved him from the JRCC in Jamestown to Devil's Lake, immigration could have come into the jail and grabbed him. The only reason they got involved is because they saw that we were actually going to let him have the humanity, the decency of going back home to Devil's Lake to live with his mother, who he hasn't seen in 30 years, who is on her deathbed with strict conditions. Usually when ICE picks somebody up, it's because they're concerned that that person is going to hide and flee and try to stay away and not answer to their crime. Judge Sandberg put forth conditions of release where ICE would absolutely know where Werner was. We said on the record, he'll be at his mother's house. We gave the address. He has an ankle monitor. There is no reason that ICE needed to grab him other than to continue to try to unnecessarily detain him for a crime that he did not commit.
Our guest right now is Dane DeKrey. He's with Rings from DeKrey a lot, talking about the Werner Kunkel situation that just continues to evolve. So how does the mechanics of it work? I mean, is it just because, look, there's been a lot of publicity on this case because, I mean, it was known at the time when a murder happened that this has been now kind of relitigated. Is it just because it was a high profile, or did somebody visit with somebody? I'm curious.
So I wish I could be in those conversations to know exactly who might have called immigration officials. What I can tell you is at the hearing on Wednesday, the state's attorney, Dan Howell, said something that I have never heard in a hearing, which is the quiet part out loud. Defense lawyers sort of have an idea that prosecutors work with ICE or talk with different jurisdictions about, hey, this guy has a detainer, he might be released soon, maybe you want some people around. But Mr. Howell explicitly told the judge, he basically said, we have no reason to hold Werner. Mr. DeKrey and Mr. Meyer are right. Mr. Kunkel should be released. But we've called ICE, and we've told ICE that they should pick him up should this happen. So this is the one instance where I know specifically that the state called ICE and asked them to come grab Werner Kunkel before he could be released.
The state, in their approach to this, and I've been critical of the Attorney General's office because they had an opportunity to come and basically prove their point when it was in the early stages of you trying to get this thing done. And they couldn't, or didn't, or refused, whatever it is. At the last minute, somebody finally just said, yeah, we'll do this. To me, that's the time that the state could have, pled their case of why they still believe that he was guilty of this murder. And they didn't. So now it seems like this is still, in my opinion, it's just that, trying to cover their own behinds, for lack of a better term, and trying to make sure that, Werner Kunkel still doesn't get to be a free man.
Well, in our system, you usually have the fight at the lowest court level. If you think that Werner Kunkel was actually guilty of this murder, then you should have come to the hearing that we had in Devil's Lake with Judge Narum, and you should have presented your evidence there. We showed up, and we had a 3-day hearing, and we presented all of our evidence for why we thought that he was not guilty. Had the Attorney General's office been so strong in their convictions, they could have fought that fight there. They chose not to. They gave the work to a prosecutor in Minot, who I felt bad for. She had no involvement in the case. She was on the case very late. It's not her job to do that work. It is only when we won, when Judge Narum agreed with us, that at the 11th hour, the state decided, wait a minute, we do want to fight this conviction. But now they're trying to have that fight in front of the state Supreme Court. That's not where those fights belong. Those fights belong in front of the district court. They missed the boat, and now they're trying to have a second bite at the apple.
So what's next? I mean, obviously detained by ICE. I imagine this is a St. Paul issue now, or how? What's next?
Yep. There's two things that are next. Number one is we're going to go down to St. Paul to an immigration judge, and we're going to make the same arguments we made 2 days ago. We're going to say Werner should be released on whatever conditions you want. He has already been released by a different judge. We think we have a good argument because we have another judge who we can just point to and say, do what Judge Sandberg did, and hopefully Werner will be released. And then while he's waiting for his immigration case to proceed, there will be an oral argument in the state Supreme Court on September 10th, where we will decide whether Judge Narum was right or not.
Wow. I don't have anything else to say about it unless you do, because I mean, it's just when you think there's getting close to closure, and then all of a sudden it's a whole new ball game when it comes to this case in particular.
This case is unique for us. I don't do as much work as the Great North Innocence Project does in this space. That's all they do. I'm doing this pro bono, helping them with it. But the intersection between immigration and the criminal case have caused wrinkles that we haven't seen before. You know, when we won this case in February, usually when someone's conviction is overturned, it's something that we all think about. It's the walk out of prison. It's where the person walks and everyone's waiting in the parking lot on the cars and you hug, and you've seen it in movies. That's what you do this work for. And we have not yet had that. We've been, I feel a little bit like Charlie Brown. I've missed the football twice. We have one more down there in St. Paul, and I'm really hoping that we don't get a Blair Walsh and we get it right down the middle and we kick that thing and get Werner out.
Dan, I always appreciate your time. I appreciate the work you do as well. We're going to be following along, all right?
Thank you so much.
Dane DeKrey, Ringstrom DeKrey is where you can find them. If you have a friend or if you have allegedly done something wrong in the eyes of the law, they are great attorneys that I would recommend you reach out to.